That's right. Welcome in. And it is a live edition of the IdahoSports.com Prepcast, our 2023 Idaho High School State Baseball Tournament Preview Extravaganza. We are on the road to the baseball championships. Literally, I'm already on the road to Lewiston. That's why I'm in this echoey room and not in my usual podcast setup. The 1A tournament starts on Wednesday. Everything else starts on Thursday. And once again, IdahoSports.com will have live coverage of every single pitch, every single game from state baseball this weekend. So welcome in. I'm Brandon Bainey. We are joined by Gary Jones and Lucas Gebhardt batting leadoff tonight because they will be on the call for the 5A state baseball tournament taking place at Wolf Field on the campus of the College of Idaho in Caldwell. And again, fans, as you're watching tonight, a couple of things, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, if you could hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then share this later, it helps out a ton. Not everybody can be here tonight to watch it live. There's going to be a lot of people coming back the next several nights to watch this on replay, and it's easier for them to find the more likes and shares and retweets that there are. So, and secondly, we're taking your questions, your comments, your shout-outs live tonight. If you want to give a shout-out to your favorite team, your favorite player, you want to ask us a question, throw it in the chat. We'll throw it up on the screen. Gentlemen, welcome in. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Lucas, looking good?
Yep, likewise. So excited that we finally have some good weather, it looks like, here this weekend, something that we haven't really had so far this spring. So it should be a good weekend for baseball for sure.
Yeah, when a Treasure Valley guy is saying the weather wasn't great, you know it's been bad because usually it's pretty good weather. Here's Sam Buffington, our number one fan from up north. Hello, everyone. Hey, Sam, good to see you. Sam's always the first commenter. Idaho Sports Die Hard. We love it. Thank you, Sam. All right, guys, let's throw the 5A bracket up on the screen. Let's actually dive into this thing and take a look at it here. Gary, when you look at this 5A bracket, what is the first thing that jumps out to you?
I guess the first thing that jumps out is Hawaii is ranked number one, and they're the defending champs, so they're in the driver's seat. I also have some history with their coach, Russ Wright. He used to coach over in this area. I coached against him when he was a coach of Payette, and then I coached against him when he was a coach of Fruitland. In my opinion, the man is the best baseball coach in the state of Idaho. I don't know who you'd replace him with. So I naturally looked at Hawaii being number one with Russ there. But they're in a dogfight with Middleton. Middleton, they both had 11-1 records in league. And the other thing I noticed, 5 teams are back. Mountain View's back again in the tournament this year. Lewiston won consolation last year. They're back. Hawaii won the whole thing. They're back. Timberline won third over Mountain View. So those are your 5 returning teams. Maybe I missed one. No, maybe 4 returning. Oh, and Lewiston. No, I think I said those. So you got 4 or 5 returning teams with a lot of experience, and it should be a barn burner.
Yeah, Hawaii and Middleton played in that best-of-3 district championship series for the District 3 title, and Middleton won that 2-1. And so for the Vikings competing in their first year at the 5A level after a good run at the 4A classification, should be interesting to see how they do. Lucas, what's the first thing that jumps out to you when you look at this bracket?
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, it's the amount of SIC schools that are in this thing, and these schools have all played each other pretty much the whole year. And then, another thing is that 2-7 matchup at the top of the bracket, I think, is an interesting one. Timberline's a school that makes this tournament almost every single year. A really good baseball program over there in Eastern Boise. And then Middleton, a school that's coming up to 5A from the 4A level. Middleton has had, don't get me wrong, a very good 4A program over the years, but that's an interesting matchup to me just because of the pedigree that this Timberline program has, and then Middleton just being brand new to this classification. And then as we kind of look at these lower seeds, Lake City, another school that they have some pitching depth. I kind of think that's an interesting 3-6 matchup as well. But Gary's right. Hawaii's in the driver's seat. I think them and Middleton, they're kind of the top 2 dogs in this classification. You probably can flip a coin 1 or 2 for both of them, but I think Hawaii has a little bit more depth, so I do agree that they are the number 1 team going into this tournament. But whether or not they win it, we'll find out this weekend for sure.
Yes, shout out to Timberline. They came into districts as the number 8 seed in the SIC, the Southern Idaho Conference. And so they always seem to figure it out in the postseason, right? They scuffled a little bit during the regular season. And yet, here they are at state once again, the pedigree, like Lucas mentioned. Gary, let me ask you about sports psychology here for a second. Owyhee is the number 1 seed, coming in as the overall favorite. Of course, Owyhee is the defending champion as well, but it was a different story last year. Owyhee came in as a bottom 4 seed, and nobody was saying, oh, yeah, Owyhee is going to be the team that's going to win it all. If they did, they're either A, an Owyhee fan, or B, a liar. And so, Gary, Owyhee was able to pull off the underdog run last year and win state. How different is it coming in as the number 1 target when everybody's, lining up to hit the piñata? Gary, are you there still?
Gary left the show. No, he's back.
Gary.
Oh man, Gary, you with us?
I pushed something. I went off the air. I tried to hook back on. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Can you see me?
Well, I mean, we have the bracket up on the screen, but
okay. I don't know what I touched, but I got back on.
That's all right. Hey, so did you hear my question, Gary?
Part of it.
Okay, so basically last year, Owyhee went to state as a bottom 4 seed. I think they were the 5 seed. They pulled off the underdog run, got to the championship, won it all. This year, the number 1 team coming in as the team everyone's lining up to take their best hit at. From a mental perspective, how different is that for Owyhee?
It is different because when you got the target on your back, you're number 1. There's a lot more pressure on you. If you go in as an underdog, everybody expects you to lose, so there's not as much pressure on you. I noticed with Russ Wright, I got some information back with him. He talked about his team's strength, and he said more experienced group than last year, really gritty players. So the ones he's got back that have that title in their belt, they're the ones that will feel the pressure. But then again, they got a title under their belt. Maybe they won't feel as much pressure. It's a two-sided coin. It can work either way.
Yeah, and of course, Owyhee famously second year of existence as a high school, so they're young in just about every sport. Lucas, who's a lower seeded team that could be like in Owyhee last year and get on a run and get to the championship?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's Lake City. Pulling up some of their stats, they have a really deep pitching staff. So, you're basically going to get their 3 top guys. They all have 11 appearances. All of them have an ERA that's under 2.28 or less. I mean, that's kind of what you need to. And if you could get 3 quality starts from those 3 guys, you only play 3 games. So if you get 3 quality starts and then get enough offense, to me, Lake City, I think, and there's just so much unknown. We talk about it every year with every tournament. So much unknown coming up from North Idaho. They just don't play as many schools from the Treasure Valley or Eastern Idaho. So to me, it's Lake City. But, again, we talked about Timberline, too. Timberline's a team with the pedigree, and they're playing their best baseball at the right time. So, you get a program like that with as much experience as they have, as well coached as they are. You get them playing the best baseball at the right time. That could be a dangerous team as well.
Gary, is there a team lurking, an underdog that you like?
Let me group the underdogs. The SIC from Boise has won. In 2019, Mountain View won. In 2020 was canceled because of COVID. 2 years ago, Timberline won. Last year, Owyhee won. So for the last 5 years, the SIC has won state. You keep rolling dice, sometimes the number's going to come up different. You can't flip heads 100 times in a row. So this might be the year that somebody upsets. And I have to go with what Lucas said. From all the stats I've looked at, Lake City, I think, has the best shot at it. The one thing, I coach baseball, as you guys know. I can tell you, though, the most important factor in all of the 3-game series is your pitching. Especially, like I coached a little 2A school, so there was a lot of difference between number 1 and number 3 pitcher. And you got to have good pitching to win every game. But I'm really looking forward to seeing the pitchers in this contest, all 8 teams, because you got so many athletes to choose from in the 5As. You can have great pitchers, but you need to have 3 good pitching games to win state. So the team that won state is a team who pitches most successfully for 3 games.
Yeah, the pitching strategy that comes in, trying to navigate, who Who do you throw in game one? Do you save your best pitcher for the end? Well, you may not get to the end. That's going to be all the fun. Now, I will tell you, though, Middleton and Hawaii especially are very loaded in their top two. And if they can figure out that third starter, they're in a good spot.
And Brandon, I'm glad you said that. That was the most difficult decision I ever had in my life, figuring out the order I wanted my pitchers to stay. Because you can save your best pitcher for number 2 or 3. But if you lose the first game, you're saving it for the consolation game. And I've gone both ways. And I can just tell you that was a gut-wrenching decision. It's something I would second-guess myself on clear to the end, and it's not easy.
Yeah, and there's no right answer. Lucas, you mentioned Lake City. They're breaking in a new coach this year. Of course, longtime coach Paul Manzardo stepped down at the end of last season. His son Kyle Manzardo is a big-time prospect for the Tampa Bay Rays. I think he's at AAA right now, on the doors of breaking into the big leagues. And so this is a program that's got a lot of history on its side. It's a new coach, but it's a lot of the same players.
Yeah, and then that's kind of what they have going for them. With a lot of the same players, and they kind of pieced it together this year. It's been a while since they've been here at the state tournament. One of the few teams that didn't play in last year's tournament, like we mentioned over at the top. And yeah, I really think that quarters final game against Eagle, that game Thursday at 12:30 Mountain Time, I think that's a winnable game for Lake City. And really, this 5A bracket, don't get me wrong, Hawaii and Middleton are the top 2 dogs, no questions about it. But then there's kind of a logjam from the 3 seed to 6, 7 seed, maybe. That whole 3 down to the 6, 7 spot. There's not a whole lot of difference between those 2 teams. So those middle 2 part of the bracket, those middle 2 games, I think those really could go either way.
Yeah, and that Mountain View Highland, that 4-5 matchup, I think is going to be kind of intriguing as well. Both programs, no strangers to playing at state. Highland has been the premier program in East Idaho the last several years. All right, guys, before we get out of here, let's take a look at our 5A players to watch. We picked one from each school. Again, it's just kind of a jumping off point, if you will. We'll start with Eagles' great pitcher, Zawadzki, and I probably butchered that. I'm doing this on my phone, and so the half of his name is cut off there, if you guys want to help me out. Gunnar Wilhelm from Highland, Cooper Smith from Lake City, Chris Rickard from Lewiston, big power bat. Robert Orlowski does it at the plate, does it on the mound. He's committed to Division I, University of Texas, San Antonio from Middleton. We've got Jack Barker from Mountain View. Ryder Cutlip is also a Division I commit from Hawaii. He's committed to Gonzaga, and he's still only a junior. And then you've got Carter Walsh from Timberline. Gary, which player are you most excited to see perform?
Probably Cutlip from Hawaii, because he's such a good pitcher. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing the pitching here. I'm sure we're going to see good hitting, but the 5A should stand out because of the fine pitching they have. But I want to just add one more thing. There's no baseball polls with the writers. So there's only 2 power rankings we can use. Our own one, we have the power rankings in the Idaho Sports. Middleton's 1, Hawaii's 2. And then we have Max Prep. Hawaii's 1 and Middleton's 2. So in terms of the power rankings and Max Prep, everybody agrees Middleton and Hawaii's number 1 and 2. Doesn't mean they're going to win, though, does it?
Right, for sure. Scott H. says, let's go Bonneville Bees. Yes, our 4A conversation is coming up for sure. Josh Byer says, let's go Vikes, Middleton Vikings. And yet we want to hear all of your shout outs. Sam says, who would be considered a dark horse in the 5A tournament? I think we said, Lake City, certainly, Timberline. And honestly, once you drop down from the top 2, anybody at that point I would consider a dark horse, certainly. Sam says, if I'm correct, Lake City hasn't been to the state tournament in baseball since 2016 when they won it all against Meridian High. Sam, I'm going to go with you on that because you're our North Idaho guy. Like, you know the deal up there. So you're right. Lake City has had some very good teams in the past, but maybe not as recently as we all thought. Lucas, going back to our players to watch, what's one guy that you are most excited to see compete?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gary on this one and Cutlip. I got a chance to watch him in the 5A tournament last year, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how He pitches and performs in this year's tournament. And, one last thing kind of going back to the bracket, Mountain View, a team that it looked like it was Mountain View's year last year. They're sitting down there at the 4 seed, and that could potentially be a rematch in the state semifinals against Hawaii on Friday night. And Mountain View fans remember pretty well on how that game ended, as do the Hawaii fans. Mountain View, I'm sure, would love to get some revenge on the other side of that, because if they play in the semifinals, Hawaii would be the heavy favorite. Last year was Mountain View. So I'm sure if that's a rematch in the state semifinals, that'd be one to watch just from an emotion standpoint.
Yeah, it was a wild tournament last year for sure, with all of the 5A action that was going on. So again, the 5A tournament starts Thursday, runs through Saturday at Wolf Field at the College of Idaho in Caldwell. Every single pitch on IdahoSports.com with Gary Jones and Lucas Gebhardt. Gentlemen, thank you for hopping on to preview the 5A state tournament. Have a good call, guys.
Thanks, but I just want you to think about the spring these players played in baseball outdoors in northern Idaho and eastern Idaho. It was even cold here in southwestern, so it's supposed to be like 90 degrees this weekend. Completely different from the spring they had to suffer through to get here.
They earned it. Baseball weather this weekend.
Yeah, finally, right? All right. Well,
Yeah.
we will take a break, and we will come back with our 4A state tournament preview on the other side of this break. You're watching the 2023 Idaho High School Baseball State Tournament Preview Special on IdahoSports.com. There's the championship ring from Gary Jones. Yes. Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com live state tournament preview special for baseball 2023 edition. Brandon Bainey joined now by Lauren Jensen and Scott Burton. They will be our broadcast duo for the 4A state baseball tournament at Skip Walker Field in Twin Falls. It is owned by the College of Southern Idaho, CSI. And so where are all my 4A baseball fans at? First of all, if you're watching this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, if you would, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this, retweet it, because not everybody can be here live tonight. A lot of people are going to come back tomorrow, Wednesday, maybe even Thursday, maybe even Friday to find out how dumb we all were with our predictions. There's going to be a lot of people coming back to watch us. It's easier for them to find with social media algorithms and stuff. The more people, the more likes there are, the more shares there are. So if you could do that, that would be great. And then all my 4A baseball fans, shout out your favorite team, your favorite player, ask us a question, put it in the comments, and we will throw it up on the screen. But for now, we're going to throw up on the screen the 4A state bracket. We had to wait a little extra, Scotty, to get this bracket. There was a bit of a snafu with the Max Preps rankings. Someone incorrectly reported a score, which throws off the entire algorithm, and ultimately nothing ended up changing. But here it is, Scott. Pocatello the 2 will play Wood River the 7. The 3-6 is Twin Falls Bishop Kelly. Bonneville at the 4 against Blackfoot at the 5. That is a District 6 rematch. And then Skyview the 1 against Moscow the 8. What's the number one thing that jumps out to you, Scott, when you see this bracket?
Oh man, if you're looking at Bonneville and Blackfoot, they're going, really? Again? Because they've played 6 times already this season. And Bonneville kind of owns them at the moment, 4-2. And they're both really evenly matched teams. And so when you look at that first round, I mean, I think if you just kind of go right down the list, I just can't help but think it's going to go chalk. The only one that might not is at 4-5. I don't know what you think, Lauren, but that's kind of what I see in that first round.
Yeah, that when I was looking at it, that is the one that you have a question about. Of course, Bonneville beats Blackfoot 2 out of 3 to end the season and win the district championship. But still, like you said, it's 4-2, so it's not it's anybody's ball game. The only other one that's really, well, I shouldn't say the only other one, but the one that really intrigues me too is that 3-6 the Twin Falls BK, just because that was the state championship game last year, and BK smoked Twin Falls in that game. So look for a little bit of maybe a little bit of a grudge match there between Twin Falls and BK.
Well, you look at that game from last year. Twin just ran out of pitchers.
Yeah,
they had really nobody to throw at that point. And Twin comes in this tournament with arguably the best pitcher in 4A in Hardesty. And this kid, if you have not seen him, can flat out bring it. I mean, this kid is throwing under a 1 point. Let's see, where am I at?
0.38, I think.
0.38 ERA with 121 strikeouts to 18 walks. I mean, this kid is solid number one on any squad in the 4A tournament, probably the 5A. Now, you take people's numbers and you kind of have to average it out against who they play. There were some weaker teams in the conference with Twin, and so they had to kind of, play those teams. And if he threw against them, those numbers would be a little inflated. But this kid right here is the real deal, Nolan Hardesty, and he's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how they use him.
Right. And speaking of pitcher usage, Scott, we've got a shout out from Chris Duke up on the screen talking about Blackfoot's ace, Dax Whitney, on the mound. He, of course, is committed to Oregon State. We know all about what he can bring. And so the question's going to be, where does Blackfoot use him? Because it's almost like a silver bullet. And so the question is, it's always the question, right, Scott? Do you save him for the end, risking the chance that you don't get there? Do you throw him right away against Bonneville, a team he's probably seen 5 million times this year? I mean, what do you do?
Well, and the thing about Blackfoot's a really good team. I mean, they've got 3 guys that can really throw. And, Dax Whitney with that 1.0 ERA. But, they can follow it with Reynolds and Grimmett, who are quality starters on the mound. And so, I really think that matchup is going to be, how did the regular season play out? Was there a certain pitcher that kind of owned Blackfoot against Bonneville and vice versa? Who do you, I think that plays a lot into it. But, you talk about a dark horse team, and, I think you look at that number 5 Blackfoot as potentially a dark horse because, I think you came into this thinking Skyview, number 1. They were number 1 in the coaches poll. They're, dominating all year. Skyview lost twice to Ridgeview, once to Twin Falls, once to Eagle. And that's their 4 losses on the season, but they got upset in that district tournament. They had to come all the way back through the losers bracket. Now, did that kind of make them human, or did that wake them up? And I think that's a really interesting point, and we'll see. But Skyview, their armor is, it's not impervious. And we've seen people lately beat Skyview. And why not Bonneville? Why not Blackfoot if Skyview's able to get by Moscow?
Yep, for sure. And Lauren, it's interesting in District 3, the different paths that the 2 representatives took, where Bishop Kelly has long been the powerhouse program, right? Defending champs. And they really scuffled in the regular season. They didn't quite play up to what we're used to seeing from Bishop Kelly. And yet they're the team holding the district's championship trophy when it's all said and done. Skyview's the team, like Scott alluded to, that had to battle back through that losers bracket. And I'll just say, pour one out for the Columbia Wildcats. They're one of the 8 best teams in 4A. It's just the way it goes with the district representation. Columbia would have been great to see there at state as well, but unfortunately they lost to Skyview in that 3rd place game. And so, Lauren, there's this mystique that's around Bishop Kelly, and they're a very dangerous number 6 seed to me.
Yeah, I mean, at a 6 seed, they are. They're very dangerous. Probably could easily be, ranked higher, seated higher than they are. And they've got a tough route, though, to have to match up right against Blackfoot right off the bat, and then to turn around, against Twin Falls right off the bat, and then turn around, and if you win, you probably are going to end up playing Pocatello, the number 2 seed, who has a bunch of good pitchers as well. And so, they've got a tough route, but they're still the team to beat.
Yeah, here's a shout out from Mendel Evans, Twin Falls Bruins. Shout out to all Bruins spring athletes, baseball, softball, and track. Go Bruins this weekend. Yeah, spoiler alert, Twin Falls' softball team is pretty darn good too. And we've got Embassy also saying, don't underestimate Moscow. They're coming on strong. Go Bears. Scott, we always talk about this. It's really hard to judge these teams from the north. And you're going to look at Moscow on the surface and go, boy, their record was putrid. But you have to remember that they are lumped into this kind of arranged marriage with the 5A schools up there in the Inland Empire League as well. And so Moscow took their lumps against Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, Lewiston this year. And so the record's deceiving.
Yeah, it's completely deceiving because they're seeing a completely different ball game than a lot of these other teams are seeing. And so, all of that comes with the point I made earlier about stats. You have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because Moscow stats, including the record, a little inflated, but that's going against those 5A teams that are in their conference, and Moscow coming in hot, really, when you think about it, in that district tournament, they were the number 3 seed and they beat number 2 Lakeland 6-1 to advance into a best of 3 series with the number 1 seed Sandpoint, and they dispatched to Sandpoint in 2 games, 3-0 and 6-3. So, maybe they're a lot better than that 8 seed. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they got some guys that can throw. Kiblin, Anderson, and Isaacson are their main 3 pitchers. And it's really Kiblin and Anderson. Isaacson's kind of a distant third, but they do have some guys that can throw. And if they can get some timely hits, they've seen the pitching because those 3 teams that you mentioned in that conference with Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, and Lewiston, all 3 of them have got pitchers, and Moscow has seen them. And so that's why Moscow really is a wild card coming into a tournament like this.
Yeah, Levi Anderson threw a no-hitter earlier this year. So, the potential there.
It's interesting, like you say, with Moscow, because they're the only team of the 8 that are hitting under 300 as a team. Everybody else as a team is hitting over 300. And, pitching wise, like Scott alluded to, 308, that's the best pitcher, his ERA. But if he's facing a lot of 5A hitters, what's that going to translate to when he gets up to guys of his own, in his own classification? They could be hitting more like 350 as a team, and that ERA could drop down to 1.5. So it's just going to be interesting to see how they fit in.
Lauren, we better talk about Pocatello since we both live there. But the Thunder are very, very talented. And I feel like this is going to sound strange for a number 2 seed, but I do feel like they've flown under the radar somewhat this year because they're in a 3-team district. They've kind of just been doing their own thing a little bit. This is a good team.
Yeah, they are really good. And they're one of the returning teams from last year's tournament as well. They played in the tournament last year, and they ended up getting knocked out 2-0, but they've got some experience here. They've got 2 really good pitchers. You've got Birch and Evans that are both, they've had 7 appearances, about 36, 38 innings pitched, and they're still like 0.2, 0.57 ERA. So they've got 2 guys under 1 ERA that's just a phenomenal stat. Again, 3-team district. I have my questions, but they're a good baseball team. They hit it well. They're hitting 355 as a team. So, they pitch well and they can hit well. Those are 2 pretty important things in the game of baseball.
Yeah, Scott, it was a pretty savvy move from Pocatello and Bonneville at the end of the year. Of course, the weather pretty much wrecked the schedule for March and half of April in East Idaho. And so Pocatello and Bonneville got down to the end of the regular season and said, we still have dates to fill. You guys just want to play? Let's do it. And Pocatello and Bonneville met up for what was a pretty interesting late season non-conference tune-up.
Yeah, this season has been so weird, and everybody's going to mention it at some point, is that it's really hard to gauge a team's growth because the growth has had to have happened in such a short amount of time because the weather really hasn't stabilized until recently, and I want to talk about that 1 second if we talk about Wood River. But Pocatello, getting back to them, talking to Coach Benavidez earlier in the week, he said this is one of the most complete teams that he's ever had in his 18 years of coaching, and that guy's been around a long time. And, you look at Pocatello, their only losses are out-of-state teams. They lost to Green Mountain, Colorado, and then a team out of Nevada, Bishop Montague. And, those are pretty solid teams. And that's it for Pocatello. Other than that, they're running the table in Idaho. And you're right, Brandon. I think this is a team that could easily win the tournament. And I'm interested to see if they get past Wood River, which they should. But, you never know. If they do, I'm interested to see if that 2-3 matchup happens in the semifinals between Twin Falls and Pocatello.
That could be a championship most years, and that would be a phenomenal semi if we got there. Let's talk about Wood River. They're the 7 seed, Scott. They have had a rough spring weather-wise. They finally got some home games in, May, I think, finally. But they were the true road warriors this year.
Oh, you talk about Wood River. You don't see them at the state tournament very often. In fact, the kids are on this team. They were 4 years old the last time Wood River was in the state tournament, if that tells you something. But you talk about the spring, and usually Eastern Idaho comes down to the Magic Valley to play. Their weather was crap. Magic Valley was crap. Wood River was even crappier. It was one of those things to where Wood River didn't practice on their own field until April 25th. And prior to that, their only full practices were in the gym. And they stopped in at Canyon Ridge and practiced. They stopped at Jerome and practiced just so they could see some dirt. They've had the same number of home practices as they've had home games. That tells you kind of stuff that's going on in Wood River. So they only played 4 true home games plus an additional game at CSI. So they might be the only team that have played at CSI this year as a home game for Wood River. So they have just been road warriors, displaced, and it's just been one of those seasons for Wood River. But once they got dirt and they got it regularly, they found their stride and they started playing really well, including a blowout victory over number 2 seed Minico in the district tournament. So don't sleep on Wood River, but they have a really tough draw with Pocatello. But, kudos to Wood River for getting hot and getting to the state tournament. And you never know. Catch lightning in a bottle, see what happens.
There's another team in the Great Basin Conference that likes the slogan "forged through fire." Maybe Wood River could be forged through weather.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at our 4A players to watch. Again, we selected one from each team. It's just kind of a jumping off point here. Cooper Cameron from Bishop Kelly, Dax Whitney from Blackfoot, we already talked about, RJ Woods from Bonneville, Jack Driscoll from Moscow. He's actually a student at Logos, private school up there in Moscow, but Logos doesn't have a baseball team. Moscow says, we're glad to have you. Brody Birch of Pocatello, Lauren talked about. Grady Daniels from Skyview's had some good hitting performances this year. Nolan Hardesty from Twin Falls, we talked about on the bump. And Rabbit Buxton from Wood River. He is a stolen base machine. And with a name like Rabbit, you have to. Lauren, who is one player on this list you're most excited to see?
Well, I'm interested to see Hardesty. I know Scott's probably already seen him, but I played at the same high school that Gary Jones coached at a little 2A school, New Plymouth. And there weren't too many guys that we saw that throw like he does. And so I'm really interested to see and what he looks like and what kind of stuff he's got. So that's the guy that I'm most interested in seeing.
Scott, one guy on that list.
Do you want to throw that list back up there again? Because he stole my dude.
Sorry. I had to, Scott.
It really is going to come down to the pitching. And, Hardesty's not going to fool anybody. Everybody's going to be watching him. Everybody knows his stats. The number 2 team, Pocatello, Birch, everybody knows about him. I'm kind of interested to see Dax Whitney. I'm a fan of pitching. And if you're going to be an underdog, then you need to step up and pitch. And you need to get deep into the game. And that's what it's going to come down to is can these pitchers, including Dax, if they want a shot. And I really think that Blackfoot could be a dark horse, but they're going to need some pitching, and Dax is going to be a big part of that.
For sure. All right. Well, the 4A state baseball tournament gets underway Thursday through Saturday at Skip Walker Field in Twin Falls, home to the CSI Eagles. And it's also going to be home to Scott Burton and Lauren Jensen as they'll be on the call for every single pitch of the 4A state tournament this weekend on IdahoSports.com. Gentlemen, thanks for stopping by. Oh, yeah, look at that. Looking slick, Scott. Everybody's got to show off something. Gary showed off the championship ring. Scott showed off the the sign.
Yeah, I was trying to find when Gary pulled that. I should have known, but when he pulled it, I was trying to find something as you were getting ready to come back, and I couldn't find any bling, And I was trying to try to upstage him. I don't know if my daughter had something laying around. I couldn't.
A
tiara,
I probably have one of
maybe.
those,
Yeah,
like
tiara. I should have had a
somewhere.
tiara. Dang
Yeah.
it.
All right, guys, we'll have a good call starting on Thursday. We will take another break. We'll come back with our 3A state tournament preview right after this. You're watching the 2023 Idaho High School State Baseball Tournament Preview Special on IdahoSports.com. Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com State Tournament Preview Special. Brandon Manning joined by Logan Green, one half of our broadcast duo for the 3A State Baseball Tournament. This will take place Thursday through Saturday at Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa. Logan, you and I were at the 3A State Tournament last year, and it was, to me, people can say what they want, but I thought it was the most exciting tournament.
Yeah, and it outside of Marsh Valley kind of just dominating their way through, the rest of the tournament had a lot of storylines and a lot that even translate over to this year. I mean, even Marsh Valley just blew through that tournament. I mean, and they did, and they're back in that top spot again this year, and rightfully so. I don't think there's anybody that can argue with that. I think you look back again, there was a lot of stuff that happened last year, right? Kimberly coming in hot. We thought maybe it was a Kalash course. Maybe you would see Kimberly and Marsh Valley. Kimberly leads in the top of the fourth inning. They lead Fruitland 3-1. They make a pitching change, and this is something you guys talked about on other portions, right? You make a pitching change, saying, "Hey, I think we're good here." And again, this just speculation, right? From what we saw with our eyes, thinking, "Hey, I'd like to have this arm on Saturday." You had the arms available Saturday, but it just wasn't in the game you wanted it to be. Fruitland makes a run to the state championship game with a super young team. What do they start? 7 freshmen, 6 or 7, something like that last year. So just a very wild tournament it was last year. A lot of the same teams are back. A lot of new storylines emerging from last year. So there's a lot in play here in the 3A tournament.
For sure. Shauna Engen says, Marsh Valley, go Eagles. And they are certainly the favorite. Hey, if you want to get in on the action like Shauna just did, just throw your comment down below like Jared Hall just did. Homedale Trojans. Yes, we want to hear you shout out your favorite team, your favorite player. Ask us a question. Throw it in the comments. We will throw it up on the screen. And also, as you're watching this tonight, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, if you could hit the like button, subscribe button, and share this. That's going to help everybody that couldn't be here live tonight come back tomorrow, the next day, Thursday, etc., and find it a little easier with all the social media algorithms. Let's go ahead and throw that bracket up on the screen, Logan. And as we take a look at this 3A state tournament bracket, what's the matchup that you're gravitated to right away?
Well, okay. So obviously there's the attractive game, right? Fruitland and Homedale, a rematch of the 3A SRV championship game. It'll look a little bit different being the first game out of the block instead of being the end of a tournament line. But that was a game of Homedale won. Homedale won the conference, and this is a Homedale team that can score. And I think that's the thing is Homedale is not a team that you can hey, we'll put in guy number 2 here and we'll sneak by him. They're not a 5 seed that you're just gonna just throw in somebody and sneak by. You got to have your best guy out there or they're gonna hit, and they are gonna hit. So that's intriguing. But I look at that 3-6 line. Okay, this is and from both sides, right? Well, last year we saw Fruitland make a run as a 7 seed. And we know Fruitland has been a dominant team over the last 15 years or whatever. And but that team had not. They were new and fresh and young. kind of nothing to lose. We're here. We're happy to be here. And they make a run. I get that vibe from Payette, right? We're back at state. It's been a while. We're happy to be here. And you know what? Nobody really knows maybe kind of what to expect from them. And I just think they're a dangerous team. Now, on the other side, Sugar Salem, I think they're the team that's improved the most from last year, right? The Diggers last year, they win that first game against Snake River in a 4-5 game on a walk-off. And then they run into Marsh Valley, who, you know, mercy rules them 10-0 game over. So I think they've gotten better this year. And I think that they're a dangerous team. And I think they're a team that has a real shot to win it. It's tough. You know, you look at that the winner of that game could potentially make a run to the championship game. And you know, and I think it could be either one of them for different reasons. That Sugar Salem is better than they were a year ago, and that Payette has nothing to lose, and they're just kind of, you know, my lower seed dark horse in the tournament.
Yeah, those top 6 seeds, it really would not surprise me if any of them found themselves in the championship. And,
right,
you know, Timberlake and Gooding, the 7 and the 8, have a chance, but their road is a little steeper just because of who they play in the first round with Kimberly and Marsh Valley, right?
Yeah, and that's nothing on them. It's just those two teams are very good, and there's just no way to get around it. That Marsh Valley team is they're good, right? I think they have one loss on the year to Burley, who's a 4A school. They've already beaten Kimberly, you know, a couple of times this year. One was close-ish, one was not, but that was at the beginning of the season. So I just look at it and I say that those two teams, but then Sugar Salem, right? Sugar, they played, I thought, a pretty good schedule. Reached out, played some 4A teams throughout their schedule. You know, their losses on the year are to Pocatello, a qualifier at 4A, Wood River, a qualifier at 4A, and Kimberly, the number 2 seed in this tournament. And that's it. And that Kimberly game was 5-4. So I don't know. I just think Sugar, you know, but if you go back to Kimberly, they're just a really good team. And they were a team last year that they ended up winning the consolation championship, and they showed us who they were. They had 2 shutouts the rest of the way, right after they lost that first game. And they're just, those top 3 are really good. And that just no knock on those, you know, those bottom 2. It's just you're running into a buzzsaw there.
Yeah, and Sugar was a very young team last year as well, relied on a number of sophomores that are now juniors. And we think about Sugar Salem, and they win all the time in every sport. Well, not baseball. This is the kind of new. And head coach Brady Gardner told me that last year when we were talking to him at state. He said, look, we want our baseball team to be on the level of what our other athletic programs are. And it's taken a lot of hard work and a lot of off-season work, and they've gotten there. And so, yeah, here's another sport that Sugar Salem can go be great at.
You know, that Sugar Salem and Bear Lake, the only teams playing this weekend that have a chance to do the trifecta, right? You won your football championship, you won your basketball championship, and a chance here to finish it off with baseball. I just think that Sugar team is very dangerous. Outside of the top 2, I know that's well. If you pick somebody outside of the top 2, of course you'd pick 3. But I just think that if anybody's going to upset Marsh Valley, I like Sugar Salem to do it.
Yeah, I like the Diggers there as well. And another team that's dangerous to me, Logan, is Homedale. They are dangerous to the opponent, but sometimes they're dangerous to themselves. We talked about this. They really commit a lot of errors. That's their one kind of bugaboo, is they throw the ball around sometimes, and that can lead to some lopsided scoring games where the pitching is phenomenal and they give up 9 runs, but like 2 of them were earned because the rest were errors. And so for Homedale, we talked about it. They won the district championship in District 3. And we both said the way that on our Treasure Valley Prepcast, where we talk about just District 3 sports, we both said the way that Homedale handled their pitching staff in districts was masterful, where they pitched Peyton Fine in game 1, Dylan Fine, their ace, in game 2 against Payette in the semis, which was a tight game. For those that don't know, Colin Heisel of Payette took a perfect game into the top of the 7th inning. The wheels fell off for a brief moment. Homedale scored 4 times and won 4-1. And like that, it was over. And then they got to the championship and did what they had to do in a high-scoring game against Fruitland. And so I'll be curious to see if the pitching strategy is the same for Homedale here at state.
Yeah, and like you said, they've given up some runs, right? They gave up double digits when they played Marsh Valley. They gave up 13 or 14 to Payette earlier in the year. But then at the same time, I mean, you see what they've done. They scored 17 against Melba, 15 against McCall Donnelly, 14 on Weiser, 12 and 10 on Buell, and then 10 on Fruitland. And so again, I mean, they're a team that like you said, it'll be interesting to see how that pitching what they do. Do you just shake hands at the beginning and say, "Hey, look, let's play another one of those 10-9 games, and we'll see who comes out on top." And then you have your ace on the next day. I'm just kidding. That doesn't occur. I'm just making stuff up. But we'll see what we get. I mean, we saw it last year. I think 20 runs Homedale scored against Weiser or something like that. I can't remember. I mean, there was one game that okay, so it was 12-11 was the score of the first round game, Weiser and Homedale last year. So they put up 12 runs, and then they gave up 20 runs, or excuse me, that was Fruitland put up 20 runs. But you know they can hit, they can score the ball. You know, they can score the ball. They can score runs as they go. They can hit the ball. They're also a dangerous team that if you get them there and they've got they've got Fine on the mound. Look out! You know. If they were to run into a Marsh Valley on day 2 and Fine's available, that's anything can happen in a state tournament.
Yeah, and everybody's got one guy, right? Payette's got Heisel and Fine for Homedale, Zane Bidwell for Fruitland. You look at Marsh Valley, and they've got Stanton Howell. The key is Marsh Valley's got 3 really good pitchers. Jason Jones statistically has been their best pitcher this year, and he's been their number 2 guy. Their number 3 pitcher has been phenomenal this year as well in spurts. And so overall, Marsh Valley is still kind of the team to beat. But there's going to be a lot of – it might be like last year, Logan, where Marsh Valley is kind of the lead dog, but there's a lot of intrigue 2 through 8.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think there is a lot of good out there. It's just going to come down again every tournament. You always say it is your pitching, and everybody's got a guy, right? Everybody does. It's pretty clear. And if you need a guy to go out there and win a game, I think everybody could do that. But who's got it that's going to last all weekend into Saturday evening?
Right. Let's take a look at our 2A play, or excuse me, our 3A players to watch. We picked one from each school. It is Zane Bidwell from Fruitland, Braden Martin from Gooding, Dylan Fine, the ace for Homedale, River Chadwick for Kimberly, who's a spark plug in the lineup, Jason Jones from Marsh Valley, Colin Heisel from Payette, Dawson McAnally, smooth fielding shortstop for Sugar Salem, and Caden Robinette for Timberlake, who also is a very sneaky pitcher on the mound for Timberlake. Logan, which player are you most excited to watch?
Look, let's go with Dawson McAnally, right, from Sugar Salem. I think that he is a Swiss Army knife to say, right? So you look what he can do. He's batting .478 on the year. He's got 19 stolen bases, 3 homers, 24 RBIs. But you mentioned great. He was voted the player of the year by the Post Register, right? He played middle linebacker for the football team. And the thing is, you mentioned great shortstop, but he also pitched 21 innings this year with a .762 ERA. I think he's a guy that you can plug in and say, hey, I need 2 good innings out of you, right, to close us out. And I think he is somebody that they could plug in throughout the tournament, and he's going to be invaluable. And, everybody's got these great starters. Everybody's got these great hitters. I think he is a guy that can do both and could potentially be that glue that wins a team a state championship that comes out of, quote, nowhere, right?
Right. I think the 3A is shaping up to be one of the most exciting tournaments again overall. And Logan Green and Glenn Jones will be on the call for those games. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday at Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa. Beautiful field. They've got a nice little party deck with a couch out there kind of down the third base line. And it's going to be a good time. And we're excited to see you guys in action and all the teams in action starting on Thursday. We will take another break and come back with our 2A state baseball tournament preview right after this on IdahoSports.com. Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com State Baseball Tournament Preview Special. Brandon Maney joined now by our two-way State Baseball Tournament broadcasters. Paul Kingsbury, of course, the director of witty banter at IdahoSports.com as well, and a pretty talented guy in his own right, Bert Sahlberg. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us, and Bert especially. This is going to be exciting.
It is. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm just hoping the weather that's happening outside right now doesn't happen this weekend. I'm also taking part in a NAI tournament here in Lewiston. We were in a lightning delay just a minute ago. So hopefully that passes through. Great weather, and we can just have fun at the tournament.
You know, Bert, I'm going to break in real quick. Bert, could you give yourself a quick bio to all the fans that are watching? Because this is going to be your first foray into, working with Idaho sports. I've known you a long time over email. I don't think you and I have actually met face to face, but we've known each other for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah. So I have a really strong sports background. I was a sports writer for a long time at the Lewiston Tribune. And then I spent a year about 88, 89 down at the Idaho Statesman, and then came back as sports editor of the Lewiston Tribune until about 2003. And then joined Lewis Clark State College. I'm their public information officer, so I write their press releases. It's kind of nice to get paid. Journalism, as you guys know, media is, sometimes. So doing that, but I do some side gigs. I do some color commentary for Lewis Clark State College basketball, some fill in for baseball, some SWX, a TV station out of Spokane. I'll do some games for them. So just kind of a hand in a little bit of everything, just keeping the sports alive. And so I'm just a sports nut that loves to be participating in things like this.
He fits right in around here, doesn't he, Brandon?
Yes. On a personal note, Bert, I am calling the 1A state tournament at Church Field in Lewiston, and I've been diving into the Lewiston Tribune archives this week to research the history, because the White Pine League just has dominated this thing. The byline pretty regularly, written by Bert Sahlberg. And so it's been a pleasure reading all of your work from the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Well, thanks. But this gray hair tells you that that's a long time ago.
Yeah. For sure. Well, let's go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead. No,
okay.
Back to you.
I was going to say, let's dive into this 2A state tournament bracket. These games will be held at Clearwater Field in Orofino, one of, if not the most scenic ballparks in the state of Idaho. And this is a bracket that is all predetermined. There's no Max Preps rankings. And so we were able to plug teams in as they clinched throughout. Your district champions, Firth won District 6. They will play the runner-up from District 3, Nampa Christian. It's weird to see Nampa Christian in a B role, a B seed, not an A seed. Orofino won District 1 and 2 up north. They'll play Declo, the champions from District 4. Marcy won District 3 this year. They'll take on Bear Lake, the second place team from District 5, and one of just two teams overall that has the chance to complete the sweep. Bear Lake won football and boys basketball championships earlier this year. Can they do in baseball? We'll wait and see. And then Malad, the champion from District 5, taking on Kellogg, the second place team from up north. Paul, when you look at this bracket, what is the first thing that jumps out to you?
The first thing that jumps out is there's 3 returning teams from last year, and it's interesting because 2A is one of those classifications where you see a lot of the same teams in it every year. You get the Grangevilles in it every year. You get the Malads and New Plymouth even. And like you mentioned, seeing Nampa Christian not as the, quote, quote, favorite coming in. It's strange, but I mean, shoot, they won 12 state championships under Mark Harris, who retired last year. Talk about big shoes to fill coming in as a new head coach. Jake Allen was a pitching coach before. And guess what? He brought him back. Bert sent me some info today. They lost 12 seniors to graduation. So yeah, it's another one of those, we just reload, they don't rebuild, they reload it. And that's one thing Nampa Christian did. But, on that bracket, if we can pull that back up again, you look at the top and the bottom, and you've really got the haves and the have-nots this year, where you're looking at the top of the bracket, you could have the championship and the semis, which is interesting because this bracket is set up how most state tournament brackets were set up for the last 30 years, right? And they changed that slowly over the last 3, 4, 5 years to what we're seeing now, where it's seeded after the tournament's done, or after the district tournaments are done. And one of the riding forces for that was to kind of eliminate that semifinal championship. And here is 2A, the one sticking to the old way, and we might have that Orofino Firth, what could be a championship game in the semis as well. So that's definitely one thing I'm looking at. The bottom of the bracket, Kellogg. Kellogg's back in it for, I don't even know. Bert might know this. I couldn't find Kellogg being in a state tournament. They were 3A before this for years and years and years. So having them back, and they came on hot late. They did not have a great season. They came on late and did well in districts and pulled themselves in. So there's a lot of good storylines on this bracket, but I think a big one is how much talent there is at the top, and the bottom. They're going to have to really struggle to come home with trophies on Saturday.
Yeah, Kellogg almost got to state last year. They lost in a state play-in game at the 3A level. And Paul, you mentioned potential championship matchup in the semifinals. There is a literal championship matchup in the first round. Firth and Nampa Christian. They played for the championship last year, Bert. So yes, Bert, when you look at this bracket, what's the first thing that jumps out to you?
Well, the same thing that jumped out to Paul is that I kind of combined records, and so the top half of the bracket is 68-18 overall for a 790 winning percentage. The bottom half of the bracket is 46-43. Just barely above 500. So when you start talking about those top 4 teams, they are all solid teams. And as you mentioned, the first game of the tournament is a rematch of last year's championship game. Mm-hmm. However, I don't think you can overlook Marsing because they beat Nampa Christian twice this season, and that's why they're the district champions. The other thing I look at is both Nampa Christian and Marsing. District 3 has dominated this tournament. They've won the last 7 state titles. The last non-District 3 team to win was Orofino on their home field in 2014. So really looking forward to those first round games, especially that first game, a rematch of the championship game.
Yeah, friendly reminder, all my 2A baseball fans that are watching this, you want to give your favorite team, your favorite player a shout out. You want to ask one of us a question, and with two media icons like Paul Kingsbury and Bert, you should definitely ask questions because these are 2 great resources. You could throw them in the comments and we'll throw them up on the screen. Okay, so let's put that bracket back up here, and I'll ask both of you this question, and I'll go with Bert first. Bert, who is the team you like coming out of that bottom half of the bracket?
Well, it's tough to say because I have not seen any of these teams play, and so it's really tough for me to really pick one. On paper, it looks like Marsing would be the one, but I don't think you can count out Malad. And then Kellogg, I do know Kellogg, even though they're 12-14 on the season, they have some athletes, and it sounds like Bear Lake does as well. If you win football and basketball, you have some athletes on your teams. So you just peak at the right time, get the right pitcher in the right situation. You just never know. But I would think Marsing would be the team to beat in the bottom half. But any given day, you just wait and see what happens.
Paul, who do you like on the bottom half?
Well, as a former, 2A WIC guy, I can't root for Marsing. It's just, I'm not allowed. They were in the same conference. We played against them all the time. But it's great to see him back. I just want to say, they haven't been in since, 6-7 years. So it's great to see them back. But I'm going to have to agree. Bear Lake or Malad, 3rd place last year. They'd love to get over that hump and get there. And Bear Lake, Logan mentioned in the last preview show, they could get the trifecta. They have to have athletes, especially in a 2A school, right? Your athletes are your athletes. It's not like a 5A school where you've got your stud football players, you've got your stud basketball and your stud baseball. Nope. More. And that, broadcasting high school sports, you see the same names. Every sports season, which makes it really easy for us, but you see those same names. And so when you come into a state tournament with a Bear Lake, you immediately think, what? I just broadcast a 2A state basketball tournament. They were really good. Yeah, I'm going to go with them, even though it's a completely different sport. They've really got the athletes. So, I'm going to put a Bear Lake, to answer your question, a Bear Lake 1A and then a Malad 1A-B, basically. If that's allowed. Will you let me do that?
Yeah, that's totally fine. That's right. Bear Lake, I think in football and in basketball, it's kind of the same thing. They came in as a lower seeded team and proved in tight games, close games, they have that winning formula. So It'll be very interesting to see how this bracket shakes out. Now, the more difficult question. Let's put that bracket back up there.
Okay.
Who comes out of the top, Bert? This could be equally tricky.
Glad you asked him first.
Yeah, that is a tough one. You kind of wonder about Declo with, I saw their season record as being 11-4. And so they haven't had a lot of games like the rest of them. They're a good 10 games behind everyone else. So you wonder, how does that affect you? Did you, what's the reason that you didn't get that many games in? I would assume weather, but also when you don't have that competition, how much does it hurt you? So I'm worried about them. Let's put it that way. Firth with the record at 20-3, they look good. But Nampa Christian, when you win 6 of 7 state titles, you've been there before, and that experience and that being able to get over those first game butterflies kind of things, that's really telling. So to me, I like Nampa Christian and Orofino to advance. Just Orofino playing at home, that's a comfort zone, and just Nampa Christian just because they've been there. But when you start talking aces going on the mound, and you've got to, I think the strategy in this, I think you have to throw your aces the first game, because these are 2 tough games. And, sometimes you look at brackets and you go, can we save our top guy? And you were talking about that a lot in the 3A. Can we save our top guy for the second game kind of things? I don't think you can in this situation. I think you got to go with what got you there and just do everything you can to get to the next round. So it'll be a really good first game, really good first matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be 0-60 immediately in this tournament. There is no easing your way into play here.
No.
Paul, who do you like from the top of the bracket?
We're in the same spot, and I think all the Declo fans are like, hey, what about us? I get it. You're the number 1 team that came out. It's a 2-team conference. Wendell came out last year, Declo this year. It goes back and forth in baseball, usually between those 2 teams. But yeah, Orofino, they've gone 2 in barbecue so many years. I mean, besides having talent, they've got a chip on their shoulder. They're playing at home. They haven't brought that blue trophy back for a little while. And Firth, they're good. Firth is very, very, very good, but it does come down to the players you've got. And that player to watch that we're going to look at, Silas, he's a junior, 0.61 ERA, 3-0 for Orofino. They come out, throw him first. Do they need to that first day? That's another thing the coaches have to look at, is who they're playing. Yeah, we have to get out, but do we need to throw our ace the first day? Do we need to? Can we bring him in the 3rd inning if we need to? Because that whole pitch count rules, there's so much to think about these days. Back in the day, you could just throw them until their arm was a noodle, and it was fine. Give them a good cortisone shot, they'll be all right in the morning. But now you can't do that. So there's so many things to look at. But coming out, gosh, I just want to say, I say Firth, and then I go, but Orofino. So I'd like to see Orofino do it because they're the home team, but I would not be shocked for Firth to do it.
Yeah, you talked about Silas Naranjo for Orofino, great pitcher. They also got Drew Hanna, who, threw like a no-hitter earlier this year. So, they do have 2 guys they can line up. Firth has so much speed on the base paths. I'm really interested to see how Firth's running game disrupts these ace pitchers that Firth will be going against as well. And then, based upon some of the old archives I was reading that Bert wrote at the Lewiston Tribune, it seems like back in the day, like in the 90s at least, the rule was like 7 innings in the tournament. That was all you got. Does that sound right, Bert?
Yes, that sounds right. Yeah, you got 7 innings and how you spread it out. Yeah, and the pitch count kind of just changes a little bit, but it's still the same philosophy. Do you go with your top ace in the first game or not? And you really do. You look at matchups. The thing that is probably tough for some of these coaches is, if you're from Northern Idaho and you're playing a Southern Idaho team, what's the scouting report? Who's giving up the scouting report to you? You've all got friends in the coaching world, and do they hit a left-hander better? Do they hit a right-hander better? Do they hit fastballs? Do they hit, is it better to throw a junk ball pitcher against somebody? And sometimes you just have to go with your gut and go, this is we have to win that first game, so we've got to go with our ace.
Yeah, and I will say in defense of Declo, Wendell did beat Nampa Christian twice this year. A Wendell kid threw a no-hitter against Nampa Christian, and then Declo turned around and cleaned up Wendell in the district pretty consistently. So I will say Declo as well has an outside shot for sure. That's what makes this tournament, I think, the most exciting. When you look at 5A through 1A, I think the 2A is the one that's the most wide open for sure. Let's take a look at our 2A players to watch. We picked one from each school, sort of a jumping off point. Hey, there's a familiar name at the top, Bryson Crane from Bear Lake. I think he was the MVP in football, MVP in state basketball as well. Will Gerard from Declo, great multi-sport athlete. Alex Vasquez from Firth. I had to pick one of the Vasquezes. I went with Alex. Logan Smith for Kellogg is only a sophomore, but he just seems to come up with clutch hit after clutch hit for the Wildcats. Gaden Combs from Malad, another young guy. JT Shade from Marsing. Braden Schaefer has been a great pitcher for Nampa Christian this year as well. And then, of course, Silas Naranjo that we just talked about from Orofino. Bert, which player are you most excited to watch on that list?
I think for me, it's the Vasquez kid. I think I'm really interested to see what he's like. I think he was a first team, if I remember correctly, he was a first team All-State selection last year. I'm really excited to see him. I'm also going to go off list with you here because
definitely
there's a couple twins from Kellogg. Colby and Riley Luna.
Ripley.
And they're both preferred walk-ons to the University of Miami football team. And so these guys, I've seen these guys physically. I have not seen them on the field and stuff, but these guys are solid guys. I'm interested to see how athletic they are just on the baseball field and what that brings to the Kellogg team.
Yeah, I believe Kellogg was playing Grangeville for that second spot to state, and they were in a pickle late in the game. I think Grangeville had the tying runs on base, and they brought in, I believe it was Colby Luna, to close out the game on the mound for Kellogg and get the win there. And you're definitely right. The Luna twins you can put on there. I just selecting one.
You can put a lot of players in there, but it's just the interesting thing is just I like pitchers. I mean, can pitchers? What are they going to be like in the tournament when the pressure's on in the big situation, big game? First game right out of the gate, you've got to come out and throw strikes right away. I mean, hopefully your defense is playing well behind you, but you've got to get ahead in counts, not give up those freebies and hit batters or a lot of walks and put yourself in a hole, because then it feels like there's pressure on you and there's pressure on your defense to make plays. And so I'm really interested to see those guys come out and see who's ready to play and who's ready to throw strikes.
And I'm going to break in Brandon real quick. Colby, is their ace, and he comes in with a 0.58 ERA. Number two is Ripley with a 4.43, nothing in between. And so if they're going to come out with their ace Colby on Thursday, they really need to get Malad in a hole as early as possible to get Colby out of there, so they have him later on, because otherwise it's going to be pitching by a huge committee on games 2 and 3. So again, that pitching, not only where you do it, but your depth is so critical, and most of all so for Kellogg in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Paul, is there one guy on that players to watch list that you're excited to see? I mean, you've seen a lot of these guys in other sports, but
right. I'm seeing old friends. That's all I'm seeing here. That's all I'm seeing. No, Logan Smith, like you said, and for a couple of reasons that we didn't mention. So there's not a lot of heavy hitting in high school. In the 4A down, 3A down, you're not going to see a lot of balls fly over the wall, especially in Orofino. It's a deep field. And coming in, I counted 12 home runs for all the teams in the state tournament on the season. Kellogg's got 4, the most, all from Logan Smith. On the other teams, Orofino 1, Firth 1, Nampa Christian 0, Declo 2, Marsing 1, Bear Lake 3, Malad none. And then Logan Smith comes in with 4 home runs, 10 stolen bases. I mean, the guy, he's going to be fun to watch, not in just one position. It's going to be, in the field, at the plate. I'm really looking forward to watching Logan Smith, see what he can do.
Yep, and a young guy too. So you might be seeing him for multiple years if Kellogg can get on the roll. So, all right, well, gentlemen, thank you for hopping on and doing this. We are so excited to watch the 2A state baseball tournament again all weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from Clearwater Field in Orofino. live on IdahoSports.com. We will take a break and come back with our last preview of the night, the 1As. That actually starts on Wednesday. That's why I'm on the road, because I got to get to Lewiston. So we will take a break and come back with that here on IdahoSports.com. Welcome back to the IdahoSports.com state baseball tournament preview special. My name is Brandon Baney, and okay, I was going to say, where's Will Kingsbury at?
I don't know. I just asked him. I talked to him like literally an hour ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
my
all
kid.
right.
He's my damn kids. I can say that, right?
Yeah, you can say that.
Okay.
Well, this is fine. I will be broadcasting the 1A state baseball tournament from Churchfield in Lewiston, along with Will Kingsbury. Paul as a stand-in.
If he shows up. If he actually shows up at the tournament, we'll see.
I'm glad you hopped back on, because I was like, I mean, I could carry the segment myself, but it's not really fun. I'm not Colin Cowherd here. I can't just
I hear you.
talk by myself for 10 minutes. So without further ado, let's remind all our fans, if you want to give your favorite team, your favorite player, a shout out, you want to ask us a question, you can throw it in the comments. We will throw it up on the screen. And as you're watching this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, if you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, retweet, share it. That helps everybody who couldn't be here live tonight catch it tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. So, all right, let's put the 1A bracket up on the screen, Paul. This is pretty easy to break down here. There's only two districts, right? District 2, the White Pine League, or the North. And then there is District 3, the Western Idaho Conference, or the South. And so basically the top 4 from each district get to go to state. And so the seeds from the North don't match how the regular season standings shook out. Clearwater Valley actually won what is believed to be the first White Pine title in school history earlier this year, but they fell to Troy in a very high-scoring championship game on Saturday night. So Clearwater Valley will be the 2 seed from the North. Troy will be the 1 seed. Troy is the defending champions in this bracket, and they came into districts as the 4 seed. So they kind of flip-flopped it. After that, you've got Potlatch as the number 3 seed out of the North. They actually were the 5 seed coming into districts. I think Troy was the 3 and Potlatch was the 5. And then Prairie, who took second in the regular season standings, they come in with the number 4 seed. Down south, a little more chalk. Your regular season champion is also your number 1 seed, Vision Charter. Same with number 2 at Glens Ferry. Horseshoe Bend took 4th in the regular season. Idaho City took 3rd. They flip-flop here. Horseshoe Bend will carry the 3 seed. Idaho City will carry the 4. And so when I look at this bracket, Paul, right away, it looks like Troy is right where they belong as that number 1 seed from the North, the defending champions. They had a great regular season. They lost a couple of close games. The White Pine League this year was very, very competitive with those 4 teams that are at state plus Kendrick, who didn't make it. And there was a lot of tight, like 1-run, extra inning type of games. And so that to me is the question, is which one of these White Pine teams is best equipped to go on a run here at state? So.
And Kendrick was on a roll, going into districts, from May, they played Potlatch 3 times, beat them twice, lost 0-3 in that last one. Beat Genesee 15-0 in the game before that. So, Kendrick has got to be just kicking themselves that they're not in this thing right now. They had every chance to, and Potlatch just came up as the spoiler there at the end and beat them. But Troy, you're right. Troy's sitting right where they need to be. Clearwater Valley is always fun. Alan Hutchins, great to work with up there at Clearwater Valley. Prairie. Hey, it's state tournament time. Yeah, Prairie's here. That's just kind of how it works out, any tournament. So watching those teams in the White Pine, it's really the Civil War of Idaho, Brandon. It's the North versus the South. is when it comes into this, and it's always fun to watch and see, because really it comes down to, right, one team's going to get the championship trophy, but all anybody remembers really is, yeah, the North won it 3 times in a row. The South, they haven't won this, and it's always North and South when they're talking about it in generalities in those circles.
And along those lines, this thing has not been won by the South for a very, very long time. In fact, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they used to make A4 and A3 play together. So you would have Prairie and Firth and Melba all at the same state tournament. And then finally in 1998, they split up and said, okay, A4, you can have your own state tournament. That very first year, and it's Jesse Toblas gives a shout out here, Vision Charter School baseball and softball. Yes, we will talk about the Eagles in just a moment. But historically, 1998, the first year that the 1As basically got their own state tournament, it was won by a team from the South. And we'll see if anybody can answer that in the comments. Which school was it? Because guess what, Paul? Since then, a team from the North has won every single year. Nobody from the South has won since the very first one in 1998. And
that was a long time ago.
Yes.
What grade were you in 98?
I was a 4th grader.
My first child was born in 1998, and she's 26. So, yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I'll reveal the answer at the end of the preview segment, which school that was. And maybe if somebody knows, you can put it in the comments with the answer. But, I mean, so it's basically a foregone conclusion, right? The Lipine. In fact, last year, the North went 4-0 against the South in the opening round at state. Like, it was literally an all District 2 semifinals. And so the question is, can somebody from the South finally break through? North Star Charter did get to the championship game 2 years ago, but they're gone. They're a 2A school now. In fact, of those 4 teams that are from the South, only one of them was at state last year, Glens Ferry. The other 3 are brand new, including, for the first time in school history, Vision Charter and Idaho City. Now, those are both fairly new programs, but this is an exciting accomplishment for the community of Idaho City and also the folks of Vision Charter.
Oh, absolutely. And we saw that, the fan from Vision Charter come on here, and Vision Charter was, 2A up there. And it seems like the 2A WIC became very private school heavy over the last 3-4 years. And great. There's always new schools coming on, and, kids get a great education, and if they can get sports, that allows their kids to, play some extracurriculars. So they got bumped down with 1A, and that's a tough conference. It's a big conference for them to play in as well. You've got perennials, the Idaho Cities, the Glens Ferries. What a great program Glens Ferry has. Martinez there has been there forever and done a great job. And, I don't think he's going anywhere, but they have a great program in all those. Horseshoe Bend, same thing, which makes that accomplishment for the North to win for so many times. It means they're very, very good. I mean, because the South is very good, so that North is, they're right there next to each other. So yeah, it's a shame a lot of those teams weren't able to come in. It was nice to see Lighthouse kind of came in as an independent, had a chance to go to state, didn't quite make it, but I like seeing the inclusivity with bringing Lighthouse in and giving them a chance. Yeah,
and so Horseshoe Bend made state 2 years ago, and they had basically borrowed a couple of players from Garden Valley. Garden Valley didn't have enough players to have their own team, so Kobe Kelly and Gillespie kind of came over and played with Horseshoe Bend, and now Garden Valley has enough kids for their own team, and they almost made it to state and didn't quite. So for Horseshoe Bend to lose that pipeline and find a way to get, and they battled all regular season, they had ups and downs, and for them to find a way to get back to state, Coach Longacre has done a phenomenal job, and I do think Horseshoe Bend is kind of a sneaky team for sure. There's Will Kingsbury. He's the guy that I'm going to be doing the games with. Will, what's going on?
Nothing much, but where are we in the preview right now?
You know what? I'm going to throw the bracket up.
Yeah.
Let's put that bracket up on the screen, Paul. Will, when you look at this bracket, what is the very first thing that jumps out to you?
It's definitely going to be that Troy team at the top. They're kind of dominating the entire state right now in terms. We saw them go against number 2 Clearwater recently. and they won 20-8. And so you're going to have that Troy team that are kind of the main objective here for other teams to beat. And then you also have Clearwater Valley, of course, against number 3 Horseshoe Bend. A lot of these are kind of give and take, but then you have power teams like Troy. And so I'm excited to see how these play out, especially along the 2 and 3 games, because those should be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think Horseshoe Bend Clearwater Valley could be the most intriguing matchup of the first round, and it comes at the end, which is good. So that's you always want your good games at nighttime at the end.
Yeah, right.
And again, these will be at Church Field in Lewiston. I do think the one team that could break through from the South and at least get to the semifinals, which again, they got skunked last year, I think is Vision Charter, the number 1 team. They are a menace on the base paths. They have 2 different players that are in the 30 to 40 stolen base range this year, which in high school is insane. They had between Klein and Lake and Wilson this year, there was a game where they each stole 7 bases in the same game. I mean, so this is a Vision Charter team that's going to get on base, and then they're going to run wild. Now, the White Pine League is used to that. Maybe some of the teams in Vision's conference aren't used to that yet because they're all such new programs, Gem State and Garden Valley. The White Pines established. They're going to be ready for it. And so can Vision run enough to manufacture some offense to get through? Because I do think outside of the first wave of pitching, I think it drops off precipitously. And it's not a commentary on the 1A schools this year. It's a commentary on 1A baseball in general, right, Paul? It's hard to get athletes at the smallest level. And if you have 2 really good pitchers like Troy did last year and has this year in Eli Stoner and Dominic Holden, I mean, that is a huge leg up.
I'm sorry. I was looking up the definition of precipitously. You're using big words here.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, that's true. And we kind of mentioned it in the 2A preview that your athletes are your athletes at these schools. And once you get your athletes playing football, playing basketball, wrestling, running track, whatever, and a lot of these we do see probably not as much as we used to, where you're running track and you're playing baseball. You're playing baseball and running, or softball running track, because you can do both. It's doable.
Not this year. Not with state baseball in Lewiston and state track in Boise. That ain't
correct.
happening.
Correct. But I have seen a lot of and sometimes they just do it, and then if they make state in one, they go in ahead of time and say, if I make state in track, sorry, I'm out. But your athletes are your athletes, and when you've got your good ones at your school, and especially a small school, it's cyclical. And some years you're just not going to have anybody. It's not like you've got hundreds of kids moving in and out every year. You can see what you're going to have from 4th, 5th grade on and go, boy, I can't wait for 8 years when that kid's 17. It's you don't do that in a 5A school because you have no clue about the thousands of kids in middle schools. But these small schools, yeah, you just walk the halls of the elementary school or out on the playground and go, that kid could throw. Yeah, let's go talk to him. And that's just the way it is. And you get these kids playing at an early age in the little leagues, bring them up, and go from there and hope for the best.
Yeah, let's take a look at our 1A players to watch. I selected one player from each team, not a comprehensive list by any stretch of the imagination. So Landon Schleeper from Clearwater Valley, one of 3 sets of siblings, is sibling Leighton Schleeper also plays. There's also the Fabbies. Landon Mills from Glens Ferry has been one of their best guys on the mound. Zeke Ochoa from Horseshoe Bend. He's made our primetime pitchers list a couple of times this year on IdahoSports.com. Gabe Goodman from Idaho City. Big power bat for the Wildcats. Really the focal point of their offense. Waylon Marshall from Potlatch. Cody Cashmitter from Prairie. Lakin Wilson, the speed demon from Vision Charter. And then Dominic Holden, probably the best pitcher overall in this field from Troy. Will, when you look at this list of 8 guys, which one are you most excited to see in person?
So I'm just going to kind of bandwagon off Troy again here, as I'm excited to watch Holden. I mean, if you look at
Will is a Troy fan. I said Will is definitely a Troy fan.
Well, just looking at their scores and everything, they definitely look like the best horse to bet on. But at the same time, there's always upsets, which I'm sure that we will have a couple during the tournament. and that's just how tournaments go.
Yep, their AD, James Stoner, is a great guy. He's been there a long time, had kids go through there. Great guy. I hate standing next to him because he's about two feet taller than I am, but James Stoner, if you're watching, good friend of the program up there.
Yeah, for sure. Another shout out for Vision Charter, Peyton Williams, number 11 for Vision Charter School. That's from Jesse Toblas. Yes, Dominic Holden and Gary Jones says, yep, Glens Ferry. He's a big Glens Ferry fan. And the Pilots, like we said, they're the most consistent program from the South. You can pretty much bookmark it every year. They're going to be at state. They've always got a lot of good athletes. Pitching depth this year stacks up pretty well. So Glens Ferry, if they can get out of the first round, I think could be set up well. And then I think you also look at that list of players to watch again. And Holden, we talked about, that was the guy Will was most excited to see. He has given up this year like 3 earned runs in like almost 50 innings of work. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He's just been so good. And so my question is when do they throw Dominic Holden? Do they go with Eli Stoner first? Do they try and play in Idaho City, their first time ever at state? Do they throw their number 3 guy? That's going to be an interesting strategy question for Troy. And their new head coach, by the way, Tyler Strunk. He's a first-year head coach. So we don't know. We can't say historically he does this because we don't know. We'll find out. The guy I'm most excited to watch on that players to watch list is Zeke Ochoa from Horseshoe Bend. He has put up some ridiculous pitching lines this year. And so Scott Burton talked about this a little bit on the 4A state tournament preview with Nolan Hardesty from Twin Falls. The numbers are great. Now, some of those games did come against teams that were, maybe not as good this year. And I think some of Zeke Ochoa's performances came that way as well. So I'm excited to see what he does here at state against the best of the best, because I think he can deliver. I think he and Horseshoe Bend are very quietly lingering. And so that's the guy I'm most excited to see. Gary says Glens Ferry was his guess at the last team from the South that won it all. Yeah. So Will, you were late to the thing, but basically, up until 1998, the A4 schools or 1A had to play with the A3 or 2A schools at state. They had to combine. In 1998, they split them off and said, okay, you small schools could have your own state tournament. A team from the South won it that very first year in 1998. A team from the South has not won since. And so the question is, which school was it that won from the South? It was not Glens Ferry, Gary. I know Glens Ferry has had a good baseball program. I think they were actually at the 2A level once upon a time. So I don't know that they've been a 1A that long. Lupe says Jesus Ortiz, number 3 from Glens Ferry. Yes, for sure. And Michelle and Dan Fabi, of course, Clearwater Valley, go Rams. I'm excited to watch Louis Fabi and Jake Fabi compete for the Rams. So it's not Glens Ferry. Do you guys, either of you, have a guess as to which school it was? The 1A or what was called the A4 baseball championship in 1998. Will, do you have a guess?
Are they 1A now?
Yes.
It was a South team.
Yep. Team from the South. Team from District 3.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna. Can I guess?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna guess. I've got 2. Can I guess 2?
Yeah, maybe you'll get it right on the first one.
I've got Wilder or Idaho City, but I think Idaho City is my first choice, and then Wilder is my second.
Okay. Idaho City, bad choice, Paul, because I literally just said earlier in this prepcast, this is their first trip to state in school history.
Oh, I didn't hear school history. I thought recent history.
They only had a baseball program for the first time 2 years ago. It was like the first.
Idaho Sports should have done an article on that.
Yeah, that was like the first article I wrote for IdahoSports.com. So nicely done.
I like it better and better.
Wilder, not a bad guess, but also incorrect. The answer is Greenleaf Friends Academy. They beat Kendrick in the championship in 1998, and then Kendrick won 3 in a row.
Okay, so they're playing with Gem State though in baseball.
And they're still a 1A.
You kind of threw me off there as I'm looking at my list of 1A baseball teams. That was trick question. I'm going to give it to you.
I don't know.
You win. You win.
Greenleaf Friends, the answer. So will someone from the South win this year for the first time since 1998? We will find out this Wednesday through Friday at Church Field in Lewiston. Myself and Will the Thrill will be on the call on IdahoSports.com. All right. Big thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight for our state tournament preview special. This will be archived. You can go back and watch this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Twitter account, or Facebook page in case you weren't able to be here live tonight. If you were here live tonight, if you could hit that like button and share this, people will be able to find it a little easier on their platform of choice. But Paul, here we are, state baseball time. It's the last big event we do for the school year here at IdahoSports.com.
It's crazy. This school year has gone by so stinking fast. And then, we're going to take a little bit of a break after the tournaments, but it's right back into planning for next year. But keep in mind that this weekend for the state tournaments, we'll have updated softball brackets. And of course, with baseball, we'll have updated brackets there. We'll have broadcasts of every state baseball game, video broadcasts of all the state baseball games, 5A through 1A. So make sure you keep checking back updated scores. Follow us, especially on Instagram, as we'll be posting player of the game stories presented by the Shift Initiative from the Idaho Transportation Department. So make sure you follow us on social media to pick up final scores, players of the game, all that good stuff. And I believe we're going to be coming out with our all tournament teams like we did with basketball after the baseball tournament. So check back in next Tuesday, Wednesday-ish. And we should have those up.
Yes, definitely. Sorry about that. I was trying to hold in that cough to the end, but couldn't do it. All right. Big thanks to all of our IdahoSports.com broadcasters for hopping on the preview show tonight. And again, the action starts Wednesday with the 1A tournament, and then everybody else jumps in on Thursday. That'll be all at IdahoSports.com. All right. For Will Kingsbury, Paul Kingsbury, and the cast of tens here at IdahoSports.com, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time.